Let's wrap up Pink Floyd's history by discussing their individual solo projects from the last decade. In 2015, a year after The Endless River, David Gilmour released his fourth solo album, Rattle That Lock. I remember being excited about this album considering how much I loved On an Island, but I think I listened through it once and never really gave it a second thought. Even leading up to this series, I really didn't remember much from it. Once again, Phil Manzanera co-produced the album, and Polly Sampson wrote most of the lyrics. The title track is kinda cool, a funky number sampling a jingle heard at a train station in France.
I then turned my iPhone on, held my iPhone up near the speaker, and waited for the next announcement.
As someone who's written jingles before, I can only imagine getting a phone call from David Gilmour wanting to sample one of your pieces for his album. The lyrics are kind of simplistic, and it should be noted that Dave's voice is starting to show its age. But once that guitar comes in, it's classic Gilmour, and it's always a treat hearing Guy Pratt's groovy bass. I also really like the video to this song with its gothic animation. There's a beautiful tribute to Rick Wright on the song A Boat Lies Waiting.
Something about the rolling motion of the piano music on that track made Polly think of the sea, and that made her think about Rick Wright, whose great love was the ocean and sailing on a boat.
With Crosby and Nash returning to sing harmonies, and there's even a sample of Rick speaking, equating death to going out to sea.
It's like going into the sea.
I gotta say, I wish this had been the last song on The Endless River. It pays homage to Rick, the concept seems to fit better with The Endless River, and the harmonies between Crosby, Gilmour, and Nash are ethereal. Outside of this, though, Rattle That Lock doesn't grab me too much. I kinda like Face of Stone, a tribute to David's late mother. In Any Tongue might be the most interesting lyrical song, an anti-war song at that, complete with another classic Gilmour solo. Today has a funky beat to it, but I can't get into the coffee shop songs like Girl in the Yellow Dress. So, not a bad album, but outside of A Boat Lies Waiting, Rattle That Lock doesn't leave me with too much impact compared to On an Island or even David's debut record. David Gilmour embarked on another tour featuring most of the returning band members, including Guy Pratt, John Caron, Phil Manzanera, and Steve DeStanislao. Kevin McAleer would be their second keyboardist, and John was promoted to singing and playing Rick Wright's parts. Which makes sense, John Caron worked closely with Rick, so he's probably the best choice to stand in for him. In July of 2016, Dave would perform live at Pompeii. I remember being excited when I found out that David Gilmour was returning to the same amphitheater that Pink Floyd played in 1971.
To be able to go back to that same venue and do the first ever concert to an audience there since it was the Gladiators.
However, I was surprised to see that John Caron wasn't in the band. Instead, we had Greg Phillinganes and Chuck Leavell, who are certainly worthy stand-ins for John and Rick Wright. Apparently John, Phil Manzanera, and Kevin McAleer ended up leaving the tour in 2016, most likely due to other commitments. John ended up joining Roger Waters' tour, where he's stayed ever since. Of course, this did not stop Pink Floyd fans from speculating about some bad blood between tour members. As I've mentioned before, John Caron would go on record claiming to have played a lot of the keyboards attributed to Rick, and even some Pink Floyd songwriting credits. He wasn't involved in the 2022 single Hey Hey Rise Up. And him being a part of Roger's band probably makes cross-collaboration difficult considering how bad relations are between David and Roger right now. Dave put out a song during the pandemic called Yes I Have Ghosts, inspired by Polly Sampson's novel Theater of Dreamers. As of this recording, Polly has posted pictures on social media of sessions for an upcoming David Gilmour album, with collaborations from Guy and Steve Gadd. Guess I'll cover that when the album is released. Speaking of Roger Waters, in 2017 he released his fourth studio album, Is This the Life We Really Want? And unlike his previous works, this one wasn't really a concept album. Roger mostly handed production reins over to Nigel Godrich, best known for OK Computer. And right off the bat, the production was my biggest hang-up. I'm really not a fan of that dried-out 2010s indie rock sound without any discernible guitar riffs or keyboard riffs, and I had a really hard time hearing the lyrics. Take The Last Refugee, for example. Very relevant lyrics commenting on the refugee crisis against a backdrop of a post-apocalyptic setting. But the first time I heard it, I had a really hard time deciphering the lyrics considering Roger's voice is mixed so low. Like David, it's clear Roger's voice is getting older and he can't hit those high notes like he used to, but the change in Roger's voice is pretty jarring. He sings very low, almost at a whisper for most of the album, and it comes off more spoken word. It's another example of the lyrics not really gelling with the music. Songs like Picture That or the title track are more great lyrical passages. They really carry that biting commentary that we heard on Amused to Death. And it should be noted that this album came out while Donald Trump was president, and boy is Roger very critical of him. But his main target is drone strikes and the lives taken by them. But it is also humorous when he compares humans to ants who don't have enough IQ to understand the pain that people feel. Like the ants, are we just dumb? And I could totally see all this lyrical content being matched to the heavy guitar chords of The Bravery of Being Out of Range, or Rick's piano chords in Us and Them, but musically it just never really comes together here. There is one musical gem on this album, Smell the Roses. This one is classic Roger. Some funky guitars and drums, Roger digs in a bit more vocally, and lyrically, it seems to be a callback to Animals. Very industrial imagery. Wake up and smell the phosphorus. The only thing the song is really missing is an epic guitar solo. I know David was never going to join him, but how cool would it have been if Jeff Beck returned for a cameo on this one? I think Is This the Life We Really Want had the potential to be a solid follow-up to Amused to Death, but it just doesn't have the musicality to match the lyric writing, and the production makes it sound very stale. As mentioned before, Roger went out on a massive tour, which was documented in the film and album Us and Them. Roger only performed a few tunes from the new album, sticking mostly to Pink Floyd classics. Since this tour, there's been a lot of controversy concerning Roger's political beliefs. From plastering Trump's face on the screen during a performance of Pigs, to his stances on Russia and Israel. In fact, Roger's most recent tour has a disclaimer that if you don't like his political beliefs, you might want to fuck off to the bar.
It's a really good way to start the show.
As mentioned, when Pink Floyd put out their song for Ukraine, Roger denounced it. As of this recording, the war in Ukraine is still going on, and the war in Gaza has escalated horrifically. Honestly, with the amount of discourse and disinformation associated with this conflict, I really don't want to get into a discussion about it, and I'm really not looking forward to reading the comments for this video. And things just seem to get worse between Roger and David, not to mention between him and Polly. The two former frontmen of Pink Floyd butted heads on the remix of Animals, and during the pandemic, Roger released a statement on YouTube claiming,
"I am banned by David Gilmour from the website."
And so Roger took it upon himself to create his own version of Pink Floyd's most immortal work. Yes, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. In 2023, Roger Waters released a solo redux of Dark Side of the Moon, and yeah. Look, a lot of people have asked me what I think of this album. There's a lot of strong opinions on it, and I just don't have that much to say about it. No, I don't like it, but what do you expect? It's 1/4 of the band that made Dark Side of the Moon revisiting music he wrote 50 years ago, and with significantly less energy.
The new recording is more reflective, I think, and it's more indicative of what the concept of the record was.
I mean, this has been done well in the past. Eric Clapton re-envisioned Layla for MTV Unplugged. And it's not like Roger can't do it without Pink Floyd. His band plays these songs night after night with good energy. But here, Roger adds in all these spoken word sections during the instrumental passages, which just don't really work. I kinda wish he had just taken this time to make another album. At least Is This the Life We Really Want was new music. You know, for someone who has constantly said he was Pink Floyd and that Dark Side of the Moon was his album, this honestly just proves how wrong he is. Hearing Us and Them without Rick's majestic piano work, I'm not gonna lie, it pissed me off. But even with all that said, it's not like it's erasing Dark Side of the Moon's memory. I have an original copy right here. I can put it on my turntable whenever I want. All of Pink Floyd's classic albums are here, and they'll continue to be listened to for generations to come. Besides, when it comes to live shows, there's one touring act that really seems to capture the spirit of Pink Floyd. Pompeii Floyd, my Pink Floyd tribute show, which you can all follow on social media at Pompeii Floyd and see when we're playing next with... Okay, that's not what I was actually going to say. No, the show that to me captures the spirit of early Pink Floyd is Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets. In 2018, at the suggestion of guitarist Lee Harris of the Blockheads, Nick Mason formed Saucerful of Secrets with Lee, Guy Pratt, Dom Benkin, who had worked with Rick Wright, and Gary Kemp of Spandau Ballet. But rather than just be another Pink Floyd tribute that performs hits from the wall, Saucerful of Secrets focuses purely on material written before Dark Side of the Moon, including that of the Syd Barrett era.
We've had a lot of people saying how pleased they were to hear the songs.
When I first heard about this, I thought it was a great idea, and it's really inspired our own show to tap into that early era of Pink Floyd's music. I got the chance to see them play in New York City.
Well, I'm at the Beacon Theater, about to watch Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets. You can see the gong in the background, and I think it's going to be a pretty epic show.
With these psychedelic projections, classic liquid light shows made up on the spot, it really did make me feel like I was experiencing early Pink Floyd in a modern setting. And Nick played his ass off. He really wasn't showing his age here, riding those double kick patterns, even triggering samples from behind the drums. And the rest of his bandmates just looked like they were having a great time. And hearing them perform Echoes live... man, did I feel like I was transported out of my seat. I even got the chance to meet Nick, super nice guy, along with Guy Pratt and Lee Harris and everyone in the crew. Before the show I saw, Roger Waters joined them on stage in 2019 to perform Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Now that's a pretty epic reunion. But in 2020, Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets released live at the Roundhouse. Definitely worth checking out. I've mentioned before that I really like their rendition of Fearless with Gary Kemp singing, along with Vegetable Man, a song I only really came to appreciate upon hearing Gary's interpretation. Guy is solid as always, throwing in a few nods to The Who's John Entwistle, which are a lot of fun. Lee is in fine form, channeling both David Gilmour and Syd Barrett. Dom dials in Rick's keyboard sounds, and Nick's showing off his tribal drumming in the Syd Barrett numbers like Astronomy Domine. And that's what I really love about Nick's band. They're so pure in respecting Pink Floyd's music, especially with Syd Barrett, but they're not afraid to put their own spin on things too.
You actually try and develop it and find new things to put into it, relatively a small amount at a time.
One neat arrangement is how they bookend Adam Hartmother with the song If. It works surprisingly well. I really enjoyed the show. Considering I never got a chance to see Pink Floyd, missed out on seeing David and Rick tour, I'm too poor to afford tickets to Roger's show, I'm really glad I got to get a taste of live Pink Floyd with Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets. And well, that catches us up with the present. I'm sure there'll be more stories to come, and maybe I'll revisit it then, but for now, it's time to close the books on Pink Floyd album reviews and rank these records. I'll see you all one more time in the next video.